Hey, practice owners, back for another edition of Coming Back Stronger. I'm excited to have our guest today, Andre Shirdan. Andre is, I don't even know how to describe him. I've heard his story of how he got here, and it's one of those amazing serendipitous things. And if you've been around dentistry at all, you've probably seen Andre if you're on social media, the dental groups. He's always there. One of the things I appreciate is he always has something really smart to say. So when I read this thing and I think, that's really interesting. How come I didn't think of that? So, Andre, how you doing?
I'm great. Good to see you.
Hold up outside Philadelphia, right?
I am. I swear
Yeah.
I haven't been out the house since March 17th. That's my promise to everybody.
So, well, and for those of us who travel a lot or kind of do the shows and the dental events, it's a little bit of a change.
Oh, yeah. Well, I did 148,000 miles last year, and I haven't done a mile since March 17th. Yeah.
This will, put a dent in a lot of people's points programs.
Oh yeah. Well, at least my car's getting good gas mileage.
Right. My wife said the same thing. She said, look how many fewer miles we're putting on the cars right now, and gas around here is under $1.
Wow.
That's the good news. Bad news is you can't drive anywhere.
Can't go anywhere. Yeah.
Right. So soon as the all clear comes, it'll shoot back up to $3 again.
It's true.
So we were talking earlier about sort of the idea behind coming back stronger and things that practice owners can do that are productive and constructive that maybe they've not done before, maybe they haven't thought about. It really is, somebody used the term gift of time.
Yeah.
This is a gift of time. You're still a practice owner. It's still your business. It doesn't run itself. And especially in this time, rather than focusing on all the things that are challenges, number one being you can't see patients, and all the, you now have to make decisions about PPP loans and EIDL loans, and when do you bring staff back and things like that. I mean, these are kind of high level business decisions.
Yeah.
These are the decisions that, CEOs make. And dentists have always been able to kind of push off because we had this continuum. No matter what happened, it's a crappy Thursday. We're going to be back seeing patients Monday. Now we got this giant hole. So the question really is, what could a practice owner who has a choice, they've got CNN over here, Fox News over here, Netflix right in the middle, or they can do something else. They can come listen to us and get some ideas about how to work on their practice. If you could just kind of explain who you are, what you do, and what's on Andre's, how he got here. And then, we talked about a few things that I think are really spot on, good tools a practice owner can do right now.
Well, so this is my 31st year in dentistry, and I've done, everything from working chairside, working at the front desk, to consulting big practices all across the country. I've worked with, thousands and thousands and thousands of practices. I tried to do the numbers, like the sign outside McDonald's. I tried to do that, billions and billions served before, but I figured I've been doing this 31 years. I'm in a practice almost every day, so 150 days a year. Mm-hmm. So somebody can do the math on that. But really what I do is my role in dentistry is I'm the guy who tries to bring consistency to practices, and that's from the front desk through the provider, from the way that we brand our practice. I mean, all those kind of things. And I got into this because I was a customer service trainer. Mm-hmm. I mean, I've been trained by Disney. I've been trained by Ritz-Carlton. My thing was, how do we bring that level of customer service into the dental practice? And then that trickled down to how do we build systems? How do we integrate technology? I was back in the Y2K days. Mm-hmm. So, how do we integrate technology and how do we make that fit as part of where we go in the 4 Ps that I talk about, which are people, process, profitability, and most importantly, philosophy. So how do we make those things work? And this has been an eye-opener for me because so many of the providers who I've worked with over the years abdicated the responsibility of being the CFO, of being the CEO. And this really hit the wall for them to make them see that they've got to be not only the CEO, not only the CFO, but they also have to look at the practice management software. They've got to look at the entire picture. And I can't tell you, since, you know, I put as 9/11 one date in my history, but 3/17 is a new date for me. 3/17, I can't tell you how many people called me and said, I have to lay off everybody and I need to know how to run my business. And, you know, as a business owner for years, you know, I never thought that it would come to a day where I have to turn to somebody else and say, how do I run my own business?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm seeing a lot of that. It's been an eye opener, but it's actually a great thing. Like I said, this is a great time to slow down and really take a look at where the practice is going and build this going forward.
Do you see that a lot of docs, you know, and, you know, neither you or I are dentists, but, you know, we know how the dental school thing works. And you come out of dental school, and I've always asked, you know, 8.5 out of 10 dentists own their business. There's no other industry, Andre, that comes close. I mean, you know, MBAs only 10% of MBAs open a business, and they got a whole education for it. 86% of practices are owned by a dentist. So, you know, they came out of dental school and maybe they did an associateship somewhere and then they decided to run their own practice. So they were in it. They started it. And that might be the last era in their practice, we'll call it, or phase, that they really thought about a lot of these things. I mean, you see that?
I see it all the time. And, you know, I love when I walk into an office, and you know, you can see my bookshelf over here. I walk into the office and I'm looking at your bookshelf, and I go in and I look at the doctor's bookshelves, you know, and if it's not like, you know, The Greatest Swing by Tiger Woods or something like that, you know,
right.
I'm just making that up, but I'm looking for them to have a copy of the E-Myth on their bookshelf.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to see that it's dog-eared, and I want to see some Post-its in there. And if I see that, then I go, okay, here's somebody who's really thought about ownership. And here's somebody who, you know, I can have a business owner to business owner conversation about. Otherwise, I'm talking to somebody who is really just a worker in that practice. And usually that person is saying to me, oh yeah, well, Sally will give you a list of that, and Mary's can tell you about how where we order this. And I go, well, do you know? And this has been, like I said, I love the fact that this has been an eye opener for a lot of guys. And when I say guys, I mean doctors, who really are just saying, I need to really take this time to learn about my business and understand this, you know. And I'm sure you've seen the post online about, you know, well, how do we charge our patients for the new protective equipment we're going to be using? Well, you've always worn protective equipment. You didn't charge then. You know, this is something that it should have been in your profit situation from the beginning. Again, my 4 Ps. If it's not about profitability, then it goes back to what are you doing about your people? And if you're going to charge your people, as in patients, a fee for your protection, guess what? They're going to haunt you. They're going to come back at you.
Yeah.
You know, it's a new thing, you know.
And I think there are a lot of those that we don't know and will fumble through. But I do also think that's not a thing you can delegate. No. You can't push that off to a practice manager and expect it to get done, your front desk person or your office manager, whoever, and expect you have to be the head of your business, especially right now, just like you were when you started it. You know, you decided the treatments you were going to do. You decided all these things, and, you know, then you got into a rhythm. Well, that rhythm just got blown out of the water. So you made an interesting statement just there. You've got to be the front desk again. You've got to look at your systems. How many practices you go in that, you know, the owner can't sit down and run a report on somebody? They say, you know what, I've got a unique opportunity here. I literally have a blank slate of a schedule. How much of, you know, some treatment are we doing? How many crowns are we doing? How many, whatever it might be. It could be anything. What's our AR? How much AR we got sitting out there? They don't even know where to start.
Yeah. And usually what I see is somebody gets in pain, meaning they can't pay their bills. And then they want to know how much is out in accounts receivable, but then they don't have an idea of what's a norm. I mean, if we normally have a month and a half of production out there in AR, and when all of a sudden it looks like, wow, how much do I have out there? They're just, you know, they're deer in the headlights. So you've got to know your business. You've got to know these things, and you've got to know what the numbers mean. You know, I always look at practices, and I've always done this evaluation of practices where if I can get 3 numbers, I can tell everything else that there is to know about that practice. Okay. It's just like, I mean, if you look at a movie theater, easy, and you say, how much is a movie ticket? How many seats in that theater? Then we can potentialize how much that theater could make if at capacity.
Mhm.
Now, can we add some things? Can we add a popcorn? Can we get you to buy some, goobers and Raisinets?
Mhm.
So if I can know what a ticket cost is, and I know what your capacity is, then I know what your practice should be making or your movie theater should be making.
Hmm.
So I do that in every practice I go, and I go, how much is a checkup? How many patients do you have? And what's your capacity? How many chairs do you have? And I can go backwards from there to know some norms. I call it practice par. I'm not a golfer, but I understand what par is.
Mhm.
But I understand what par should be for that practice. And then we work backwards from there. So if I say par for your practice is $1.2 million, and
Mhm.
you're doing 750,000, well, there's some room there because you're not even playing at par.
Right.
So that's how I look at it. And
Huh.
I've had these calls and I say to the, doctors have said, hey, I need help. I don't know what I'm doing. I say, okay, slow down and tell me about your practice. And a lot of them are like, I have dental practice. What are you talking about? I have dental practice.
Right.
You know what a dental practice
They're all the
is.
same. Yeah.
Yeah. And I say, do you do implants? Do you place, do you do your own third molar extractions? How many hygienists do you have in your practice? Do you do this? Did you go to Pankey? Are you a Dawson guy? Are you a Spear guy? Tell me about your practice, because I can't tell you how to run your practice until you tell me who your mentors are, where your point of reference are. And again, from that first P that I work on, philosophy, then we can figure out, because I have a feeling we're going to have some changeover in staff coming back.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I use staff because staff in this example would be an infection and you want to get rid of it anyway. So
There you go.
Yeah. So, when we come back, we're going to have some changes. And are we going to bring the right people in who then fit back into that philosophy? Are we going to have processes in place? Because are we going to say, hey, you know what? Things are so tight that we're no longer going to buy, we're not going to send our lab cases to Glidewell or Arrowhead, or we're going to send it to Bob's lab because he charges $12 for a crown.
Right.
Does that fit your philosophy? So again, profit. So those are the kind of things that I look at when I get these questions. And usually I get this blank stare or this dead space on the phone because they have never thought about it before. But this is the time to get them back to the basics, back to, like you said, when you opened your practice and you were getting your relatives in for treatment because nobody else was coming in.
Right.
That's what we have to do. We've got to come back to that. And you can't say to the patient, get in the chair, wow, we've been so, I've been so broke, I got to see you and do some treatment. You got to slow down, because if people see that desperation, which we're all desperate to get back into business, but if the patients see that desperation, you're going to burn through them pretty quickly.
So this is kind of maybe what you're saying is you look at it like a restart or a reboot, or look at things you may have never looked at before. And it's interesting you say this about the movie theater. I actually have a friend who owns movie theaters, and he started to build these the big recliner movie theaters. And and we were at breakfast one day and having coffee. And I asked him about, the business and the margins and all that. And he said literally what you said. Yeah. He said, I have this many chairs or this many seats. Because my question was, it seems like you're cutting half your theater down, because these are big, wide, cushy chairs and big, wide aisles. And I said, aren't you better off when you have them snugged up? And he said, let me ask you this. I'm charging X dollars. And I forget, we don't really go to a lot of movies. But, what would a ticket be? And he said, but if I give you this cozy chair, you're going to show up. And he said, but that's not why I want you there. He said, I want you there to buy wine and White Castles. And I said, what are you, like, what? And he said, those are his two biggest things. He said, we did all this research and found out what people wanted. And they want wine and White Castles, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. Yeah. But he said his margin on those is just off the chart. It's way more. So he goes, you're not, $15 for a movie ticket. You're $28 is what you are. So, and you're comfortable and you keep coming back, and it's a Sunday afternoon. So you just show up. There is no matinee anymore because, you're willing to pay it. Yeah. So in a dental office, that's kind of the same thing.
It's the same thing. And we have to be really, there's a fine line, because you can't all of a sudden start bringing adult fluoride into your practice if that hasn't been part of your philosophy before. So we've got to introduce these things so that they match our normal rhythms. But at the same time, we've got to understand that patients who don't show up for the next visit, we've lost that opportunity. You didn't come back for Star Wars Chapter 2. Right. I've got to make sure that you're intrigued and make sure that you're not going to Netflix again. So that's the thing that I work on with practices, so that they see the value in keeping patients. It's never about new patients. It's always about keeping the patients you have and making sure that when they're in the operatory, they're buying the popcorn, you know? So,
and they keep coming back. So what are some things right now, if we're gonna think of this in terms of, you know, back when I started my practice, I inched my way up. And I've had this question, I don't know, a dozen times in the past few weeks. You can't flip a switch and say, all right, staff, come on back. You're inching your way up, and it's a day-to-day process where you're saying, all right, we're looking at a schedule. Here's our production, and it's half of what it was. We don't need 100% of staff because we can't sustain that very long. So we got to decide who we bring back. What are some things in that vein, that is, as we start back up and turn this faucet on, that maybe a practice owner could be looking at right now, you know, go into the office on their own. They know it's going to be a week or 2 weeks or whatever, sort of hands-on-y things they can be doing now to get ready for that.
Well, one of the things I've been thinking about, and this is the, you know, the optimist in me, I think we're going to be back at full capacity. And the reason I think so is because 50% of the patients, I'm just going to use that as an easy number, 50% of our patients are saying, I'm not coming out until this is blown over. All right. And the other 50% are saying, I need to come in. So 50% of the people who we've postponed treatment are going to make up for the 50% of the people who aren't going to come in. So, and I think we'll be at a pretty full capacity. And I think we were talking about this a little while ago. You know, one of the things we have to look at is those people who have been around through the AIDS epidemic. And the patients who were leery of what was happening in the practice. I think that's the kid gloves we're going to be using going forward. And if we can reassure our patients without scaring them and without burdening them with our issues, if we can bring them back into a normal rhythm and say, you know, we've always been the cleanest practice. You know, this is the one place where if something fell on the floor, you might not even care to, you know, that it was the 5-second rule. You know, here's a practice where we've always done this, and we're just adding another layer to what we've done in order to meet the criteria that we, you know, that the government's requested us to do. But we've always been the cleanest place in the neighborhood. All right. You know, so I think if we do that, then we can get back to full capacity pretty quickly through our patients who are already asking to come back and those patients who have been on hold to come back. So I'm not real concerned, but what I do need to make sure people do is you've got to look at your situation at your reception area. You got to look at your situation in your operatories and figure out, you know, maybe just like I've seen some of the grocery stores online where they put tape around areas to show us a distance rating. As a recovering front desk person, you know, I worked at the front desk, and I always wish that we had some sort of barrier that said, you know, if somebody else is at the desk, please stand here. You know, so I think this is a good thing. We can look at it a couple of different ways.
So you have two, you have if you're a practice right now, you have about 2 months roughly of patients who missed a hygiene visit. So you have two choices. And I know a lot that are just calling and saying, listen, you know, we're full 6 months out, so we don't have a place to put you. So we're just going to skip it and go to October. That's very dangerous. Oh, yeah. That's your profit margin for the year right there that you're just handing off. And they're not hygiene patients. They are, for every dollar of hygiene, you know, if you're doing it right, you're scheduling about $3 worth of restorative. So that's $4 for every dollar, you know, for every hour of hygiene, that's about $400 that is not going to come into the practice, you know, a month from now and 2 months from now when your insurance would have paid. So you have a giant hole in your production. So, so I agree with you there. I think you're going to see more patients who say, you know, just what's it going to take to get back on track? You know, if we open on the 11th, I'll be there the 12th. You know, you tell me where you can put me. So you have two things. One is you have a blank schedule where you can plug who you want, where you want, and you might be working a Friday. So suddenly you're seeing a bunch of these patients on a Friday, or, you know, till between 5 and 7 p.m., 2 days a week for the next 4 weeks or whatever. But you've got this opportunity to juggle them around. The other thing is you do have those two groups of patients. The ones who, you know, they're not coming in till they get, you know, till the siren sounds and it says we're all clear, we can come out of the bunker. Right. So should we be calling patients right now? And I mean, we don't know the date we're going to open, but we know roughly. Should we be calling patients right now and trying to decide where they fall? Yeah. And the ones who are willing to come in, you know, book them, The ones who aren't, politely say, okay, we'll call you in 2 more weeks or 3 more weeks.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way of looking at it. Well, you got to take their temperature, figuratively.
Right.
We got to take their temperature and find out where they stand, because there are a lot of people who are just yelling because they can't come in, which is amazing. But I think that's a great way to look at it and say, what, hey Steve, are you ready to come back in? We got you scheduled next week. Are you ready to come back in? This is a great opportunity to do some marketing campaigns. Somebody made a suggestion online. I thought it was great. Mail out some toothbrushes and say, you haven't been here, but keep them into the top of consciousness so they understand that you're thinking about them, because there are a lot of patients who had issues during this period of time and called your office, and your message said you're closed.
Yeah.
And they went to practice B, got their crown re-cemented. And now, because I've gotten the phone calls, guys, people called me and say, my doctor's closed. Who should I go to? And the opportunity was made for somebody else to treat them, and they might have a new dental home.
They're now in their recall system.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that, and again, this was the way that this came down was pretty, fast and hard. But, and I think a lot of the information that was put out there to to say that your office was closed, but, that was a life lesson for us.
Yeah. So you hit, I think you said something there that hadn't occurred to me. You may call somebody who is scheduled for hygiene, you say you're going to open May 11th, they're scheduled for hygiene May 13th, and they're uncomfortable coming out that soon. That's a hole for somebody who's fine with it. Now you can put them in there. So don't take any, I guess maybe we're saying, don't take any of them for granted. Like you said, take the temperature, test every one of them. And yeah, you may find that, once you start juggling people around, you're at 110% coming back again, which you need.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the things I've always done in practice is this is going to be a situation where capacity coming back, because we've rescheduled 2-3 weeks of patients. This is a great time to, one of the models that I use in all my practices is, I have a hygiene day at least once a month where I bring in temp hygienists. Doctor does nothing other than exams. So if, say we have 5 chairs, we have 5 hygienists work in one day, 8 hours. So 1 patient an hour for 5 chairs. All right. And guess what? We're catching up on our recall. So we're not pushing patients out further and further and further. I'm going to take them. And the great thing about that is now I've got this relationship with all these temp hygienists who could be permanent temp hygienists. If I ever need anybody, they're on my call list. But the other thing is my doctor's spending all day doing exams and looking for restorative care. So out of that one day, imagine how much restorative care they booked out. So we're going to be backed up, but doctors, you're not as backed up. You're only booked out, say, 2 weeks, where hygiene's booked out 6 months. Bring in some temp hygienists, get those scheduled, get your patients back into the cycle. Do those great exams because they've been away from you for a month. Do some great exams, find some restorative care, and start restacking your deck for the next couple of months. So that's something that I've always done. I've always had hygiene days in almost all the offices especially if you're doing a big marketing campaign, where do you put them?
Right.
So that I do that on almost all the offices I work with.
So should the doc be making some of these calls? The practice owner?
Well, every call that I've ever made to a patient ends with, Steve, would you like the doctor to talk to you about that? If you had any kind of question, and normally you go, no, I don't want to bother them. But I always give it as an opportunity. A new patient calls and says, hey, I've got a little pain. I go, would you like to talk to the doctor about that? And 99% of them go, nah. The 1% who do, we're going to chew his ear off for an hour. But I always do that. Would you like to talk to the doctor about that? And, doctor just gets on and basically nods his head and, yeah, okay, we'll take care of that when we see you, Steve. But I think everybody, and this is the Disney in me, everybody should have the opportunity to talk to the doctor. And they just get blown away. They, believe me, my cancellation rate for new patients is about nil when you give them the opportunity to talk to the doctor. They're just blown away that they go, I can't believe I can talk to him. Right.
Well, it makes you more approachable and real and authentic. And so it's funny you say that. My wife has been through the Disney Institute, and she's a big believer. She went through it with the company she works for, a large healthcare company, or health insurance company. And so it really is for doctors who don't understand it, or practice owners who don't understand it. she would tell me some of the systems. They have a system for everything. In fact, they have a system for, I don't know if you know this, but they have a system for the people who lose their car every day.
Yeah.
It's a ridiculous number of people who don't have their keys. So, you know, there's a tram coming, you're getting out of the minivan, the kids are screaming, you're trying to get lunch. And she said they have statistics on the number of and it's for some reason, you know, minivans, that the back door is open and the van is running and the people have run and gotten on the tram. Now, 9 hours, 10 hours from now, they're going to be coming out with kids who are, you know, asleep, a dead cell phone, because you normally figured out that you took a picture of where you parked, except, you know, your cell phone went dead because you've been in Disney all day. Yeah. And they actually have a whole system where you say, they'll ask you, and this is one of the Disney secrets. They'll say, what time did you get here? You know, so there's somebody at the end, you'll see a Disney person standing there, you know, pleasantly say, what time did you get here? And you'll say, I got here about quarter to 10. And they'll say, all right, you're in section something, 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 something. That's why they lead you in to park, how they line you up. So it's not, first of all, it's to keep it orderly. It's because they know those questions are going to happen. They happen every day. So they can say, you're over here. And by the way, I've got a note here. Somebody will meet you at your van with your keys because you walked out and suddenly felt you didn't have it. So the point to that is there are systems in our dental office that we don't even know we have, and it may not be a good system. Right. It may be a system where we tell people, you know, where we have a big line at Lost and Found at the end of the day, or it's something you can get in front of right now. Yeah. Are any of those come to mind that you can?
Well, there's lots of them. You know, when I used to teach a customer service course outside of dentistry, and the title of it was Omotenashi. And Omotenashi is it's a Japanese customer service method that basically, if you've ever been to even a Japanese restaurant that's, you know, traditional Japanese, or if you've ever seen a tea service, the idea of it is going above and beyond where the person giving the service disappears. And it's all about expectation. I expected that you're going to drop a fork, so I already have a fork available to you. There's no break in your meal. It's already there. If you think about that, and you think about the way that if you've ever been to, you know, somebody who does this, you've gone, you know, some of the restaurants, Peninsula hotels, you know, if you see the way that they go about it, it's, I don't need to ask you if you're going to need this. It's taken care of you. Right. I mean, yes, I'm going to lay out a chopstick for you, but you're American, so you're probably going to need a spoon and a fork. So, but if I know that ahead of time, I don't have to, you know, make you uncomfortable because you're going to ask for one. So those kind of things, knowing what patients typically do, understanding what we're going to be going through with patients with, not wanting to touch your pen on the desk. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So maybe making a show of wiping the pen down before you hand it to them. Okay. You know, just anytime you have to make a show of something so that they see that it was already done. You know, we used to take people for a tour to show them our sterilization area. You know, mm-hmm. People don't do that anymore, but it used to be a thing, you know, especially after the AIDS epidemic, to show people how instruments are sterilized. You know, now, well, I think we're going to have to do the same thing to let people know, because they're going to hear the stories of aerosols. They're going to hear these things. So we've got to make it to say, this is what we're doing in order to do this. This is why we've done this in the past, and this is what we're going to do this. And they're going to be, again, the 50% of our patients who are going to need that in order to be patients again. So we have to go above and beyond. Again, anybody wants to look it up, Omotenashi, look that term up and you'll get an idea of what it means. But it's customer service. And, you know, again, I'm a Disney Ritz guy. I've been through Disney Institute. We know customer service in America as taking care of the customer, but we're still, you know, rolling our eyes behind their back. Mm-hmm. That's right. American customer service. When we go another step is we do this because it's the reason we are in business. You know, it's the only reason I look at, and everybody should realize this now, you know, for somebody like me who my entire business is based on, well, not my entire, but most of my business is based on dentistry. Well, dentistry is out of business at the moment, which means a big part of my business is out of business. So I have to understand that I live for dentistry. Mm-hmm. So that's how my customer service has to work. So.
And system wise, you know, those are things that here's what I always find. I'll ask in the old consulting days, I'll say, how do you do this? And the doc will say, oh, well, we do this, we do that. We always ask for a referral. We always ask this. And then, you know, we have somebody go in and walk through it, and nobody asks for a referral. And so now's a good time maybe to think of that, because maybe, I mean, there are a lot of practice owners, like you said at the beginning, they don't know what's really going on in their practice. So now's a good time to reestablish that. And in the context of things like infection control. I mean, Andre, how many of your patients knew the terms infection control, PPE, or dental aerosols 6 weeks ago?
Yeah.
Now they all do.
Yeah. And I think dentistry is also making it worse on ourselves, because we're fighting that online. And I think you almost don't want, you know, it's like you don't want to know what's in the burger at McDonald's.
Right.
You just want to enjoy it, right? Sometimes we don't need to let everybody know what happens behind the scenes, you know, and that's the whole idea of Disney, you know, but this is a great opportunity to, and again, I'll use a Disney analogy. This is Walt Disney would walk the park when he was alive, and, you know, he never saw Disney World, but he saw Disneyland. He walked the park, and he walked it every day. I have a lot of doctors who they specifically built their practice where they could park in the back and go through a back door. Yes. And they go through the back door into their office. They sit there, they get their loops charged up, and then they go to the operatory, and then they go back. And they've never sat in the reception area. Right. You know, you've got to do that. And I can't tell you how many offices I go in, and there's a dental economics sitting on a coffee table in the reception area. And the front page is, you know, how much more can we get out of our patients, or some article like that.
Right. Right.
We've got to be able to walk the park, and we've got to be able to see what happens in the practice from our patient's point of view. And that's going to be really important going forward, because if tomorrow we open up a practice and we've got a plexi screen in front of our patients,
that's a tough barrier. Yeah.
It's a tough call, but we've got to figure out a way to make this happen at the same time, not make it offensive, you know?
And that's, you know, that you hit on a great point. And there are a lot of, there was a business book several years ago that advocated management by walking around. They call it MBWA, management by walking around. And it was, you know, somebody who has, if they're, even if they're the production manager at a factory, take a certain time every week, you know, Friday morning, and walk around and just say, you know, here's a machine operator, how are things going? You know, and they're going to tell you, oh, you know, this is great, except I'm missing this, or I need that. I think a lot of practice owners could do that now with their staff in an informal way. I mean, you tell me, sometimes meetings are not the place for this, because, you know, meetings turn into unproductive time, but just especially now, maybe, and I'd like your opinion, daily, weekly, there's a time frame where you just ask your staff, you know, sort of I'm trying to think of what my wife calls it, lessons learned. We end the day and we do a quick lessons learned. All right, what did we find out today? And the person at the front desk says, everybody hates that shield. Or I had a patient say, we need hand sanitizer back here in the back or by the bathroom. Or it's a good time to say, we're all learning. We're finding our new normal. We don't have answers. There's not a book on the shelf to learn about it, but what are your thoughts on that, kind of that part of management by walking around?
I think that's a great thing. I mean, I do that in every office I've ever gone to. I say, you know what, we're going to work tomorrow, but today I'm going to come in, I'm just going to be a fly on the wall. And I just want to talk to you. And I go, oh, there's your kid back there in that picture. You know, oh, is that your Cocker Spaniel? Oh yeah. You know, and I want to know about you so that we can have a different relationship. And I think this is a great opportunity to get back to those things. I have a lot of people who, you know, don't know their kids' names, you know, the kids of their staff's name. You know, this is the time to get back to the basics. And it really is, it's a great opportunity. You know, this is the optimist in me, but this is a great opportunity.
Well, I know you're very good with teams and bringing teams together, and that's part of one of the reasons we're talking today. But that's a good point. I think a lot of docs, you know, you've done this for 20 years. You've had a lot of assistants come and go, a lot of hygienists come and go, and change the office manager, so you have an arm's length with them. But right now, you're about to ask them. You've got some big asks coming for your A players. And you said earlier, staff. I'm going to steal that, by the way.
That's not. I stole it from somebody else.
FTAP, like a different kind of staff.
Yeah.
And there's some you want to get rid of. But the ones you want to keep, you're going to have to understand they are just as nervous and anxious, no matter what they say. You're probably asking them to work extra. You're certainly asking them to do things that they haven't done and never done, and they're turning to you to be the leader. I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
Just know something about them. And, it's a big ask of a lot of people. So
yeah, this is a very scary time. And I don't think there's nothing that we've ever, dealt with before that's like this. Mm-hmm. And, we can equate it to anything else. I mean, I work with a lot of federally qualified healthcare centers and, who daily work with patients who have infectious diseases. I mean, and that's really what it comes down to. But this is different. This is different. And we've got to be able to say to our people, hygienists are going to have a really tough time because their governing bodies are telling them that this is not the right time to go back to work. Mm-hmm. So this, like you said, this is a hard ask. Right. And when everybody else is telling you that you shouldn't, this is going to be a hard one, and this is going to be a very difficult transition. And I think we've got to find a way to navigate through it. And leadership is the way, And
it's really both sides, because dentists, you and I have worked with a lot of dentists, and there is sort of a personality, and it is a very conflict avoidance personality, mm-hmm. difficult conversation avoidance personalities. And right now, you're the owner, and you have to have those kind of conversations. And as you sort of come back into this, who do you pick? Who do you listen to? You listen to the president, the governor, the ADA, the Pennsylvania Dental Association, or the Pennsylvania Hygienist Association. Because one of the things that we've seen through this is, they could be complete opposite ends of a spectrum on here's what you're supposed to do. Yeah. And you need to respect that in your staff. And help get through that, and so so maybe my question is, any words of advice for a dentist who? I mean, my advice is just do it. You're probably a lot more gentle than me.
No, I'm the crew guy, because for me it's about, if you can't row, get off my boat. And I'll find somebody else who can. And I'm okay. honest about that. We can be friends other than that, but you've got a job to do, and this is what we're going to do. It's almost like the military. Mm-hmm. Nobody wants to go to war, but if we're at war, you gotta carry a gun. Right. So I'm very much like that when it comes to work. But at the same time, I want to make sure that everything around you is set so that you're safe and everything else is right. So if I'm going to send you to war, you're going to have the right tools to be at war. And I understand the risk, but at the same time, I think this is a time where, especially, I love a lot of my docs who are faith-based, and they start the day with prayer. I mean, that might not be for everybody, but at least I see that they're all on the same page. All right, and for me, it's we keep talking about Disney, but you know what? You don't work at Disney if you're not going to do the Disney rules. You don't work at Chick-fil-A if you're not going to do the Chick-fil-A things. Right. You don't work at Hooters if you're not going to follow the Hooters rules. And all those examples I give because, as ridiculous as they all are, they're the companies that have the best employee manuals, because it not only tells you what they're doing, but it tells you why they do it. And I think if we can start with that and get everybody on the same page, then we can work backwards on the other things. And somebody doesn't feel uncomfortable coming to you and saying, "Hey, doc, these face shields just don't allow me to do the work that I need to do," or is it okay if I just wear goggles and a PPE mask, or what can I do to make this work? But if the lines of communication aren't smooth enough, then we're going to have some pushback and we're going to have some losses, and I think that's the worst part of this.
Well, and again, we've got we're about to not to enter we're ending. What do they say? It's not the it's not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end, but it is the end of the beginning. So Winston Churchill. Yep. We're about to finish the end of the beginning, and that day we open is a whole new mess. Yep. And and I think the other thing, you said it earlier, that a lot of practice owners have not been the CEO for a while. They're going to need to be a CEO now and make that call and say, in our practice, we're following, the ADA says this, so this is our new rule. Yeah. Or the Pennsylvania Dental Association says this is what we're going by. Yeah. Right, wrong, or indifferent, but you've got to be the one to make that call. That's agree with that.
And my CEO 101 course, in the, not that I teach this, but if I was teaching this, it would be, if you can get four post-its, put a P on all of them. Start one with philosophy, people, process, and profitability. If you can write down on your philosophy on a post-it, we can't get any larger than the post-it. Write down your philosophy. That's who you are as a person, what you will, where you stand, what your faith is, whatever that would be. All right. And then write down who the people who support that is. And I always look back and make sure that they have their family on there someplace, but you've got your employees, you've got the people who do that. And then you've got your experts who help you. Okay. And then let's talk about processes. Do you refer out endo, or do you do it in-house, or do you dance around that subject? Well, sometimes I do, let's be clear about it. And then tell me what you need to make next year in order to make this all happen. Profitability. Tell me where you need to be, but also tell me in that you want to spend six weeks in South America doing missionary work. But I want to see that on there. So that's your profitability section. Now, anytime you ask me a question, you're going to say to me, Andre, hey, can I take my staff to this course? I go, okay, where does it fit? Does this course you're going to fit in your philosophy? Yeah, it kind of does. Does it fit into your profitability? Are you going to be able to afford it? Yeah. Will it fit into the processes you're talking about? Yeah. Okay. Who are the people you're going to take? Wow, I see it. And then you don't need to ask me. It's all right there. If you can do that, then, if you use this opportunity to build those four squares, everything else will work out.
So this is your decision tree.
It is.
You filter every decision through that. And I think also one of the things it does, the byproduct is the team already knows, before they ask something, they already know.
Yeah.
They've mentally gone through the process and they know what you're going to ask. And, that's sort of a well-oiled machine.
Exactly.
Well, good. So Andre, as we get close to the end here, I always like to ask, and so this is a long list for you, but any parting words, any tips, any real takeaways for a doc who is scared to death right now, wants to do something, but wants to be smart and productive about it, that they can, get in literally tomorrow morning and start working on their practice?
I think the most important thing that everybody should understand about this is get back to basics. You're going to need to thank the patients who are coming in, just like you did the first patient that came into your practice. After your mom and dad, the first patient that came into your practice, you thank them for coming, thank them for the confidence to come back into the practice, and make sure that you're going to be available to them for the next time they come in. And that's what you need to do. As long as we get back to basics, we need to, and this is going to be, we've been away from some of these people for a little bit of time, just reassure them, go back to the data, make sure that the receipt that they get at the end of the exam matches what they expect for insurance, because people are going to be very leery about co-payments. So make sure that your numbers are right. So this is the time to get back to basics, make sure your software is correct, make sure that your, again, philosophy and everything else is correct. And then if that's good, you're going to be golden.
Very, very wise words. So, Andre, it is always a pleasure having you on. Always a pleasure seeing you.
Good seeing you too.
Out in the world. And I know we travel a lot and run into each other, and that's sort of, again, I'd like to see that world get back, because I enjoy the movement of it. Right now we can't, but so we do what we can do. And that's where this coming back stronger really came from, is I can do this now. In some sense, it's kind of what I do anyway. You and I both. Yeah. It's what we do. We help dentists who 8.5 out of 10 of which are practice owners be better practice owners. So I really appreciate you coming on today.
My pleasure. Good to see you.
And practice owners, with that, we'll draw this episode to close. Andre Shirdan, I forgot to ask Andre, how would somebody get in touch with you if they wanted to?
Best way to get in touch with me is just go to my website, which is thecrewprocess.com. Best way to get.
CREW, the Crew Process. Awesome. So practice owners, don't hesitate. Reach out to Andre. If you can't get a hold of him, you can always get us, and we'll make sure you're connected. So until next time, thanks for watching. Coming back stronger.